Hey, what's up friends? In this video, we're talking all about how to install LED lights. So right here on my bumper, I have these work lights. Whether you're talking LED work lights or fog lights or even something going on in the cab, as long as it has an on and off switch and a relay, this video is going to cover it. So we go into great detail because guys, over here on the channel, we're always overlanding, going across country. Right here's my flatbed trailer. Whether we're pulling the flatbed or the RV travel trailer, guys, I'm usually hooking up at night. And whether I'm hooking up or just doing stuff at the back of the truck, these lights, as you can tell, it's pitch black. They offer such amazing light and they just get the job done. Guys, it's something that's been essential to keep us on the road, to keep us going, and to keep us safe. So I think you're going to enjoy this video. I stole it from my other channel, so you're going to hear bits and pieces of that, but I really think it's going to be great for this audience here. Guys, let's get into that video. So for this project, I ordered the Nilight Fog lights. These are off-road lights. They're kind of a work light slash fog, and it comes with a little kit that we'll be installing on my bumper later. And then this is also from Nilight. This is going to go inside the truck, and it lights up little LED bright when it's on, and I think it has a smaller one down below when it's off. I'm only installing one thing, just these one lights on here, but I wanted to future-proof this thing, so I ordered that as well. And that's probably a pro tip for you guys. Make sure and future-proof. I might put a light bar up on top later, and then maybe some fog lights up front. And then I ordered 100 foot of cable wrap. This is split down the middle, and so you run the wire through all this so it's not rubbing and getting cut, and then you start wondering why your lights aren't working. This isn't so important for the kind of application I'm doing with these lights. If they didn't work, it wouldn't, ruin my day. But in different four-wheel drive settings, you want to make sure that your wire is protected. So that's just a good habit. Here's my 4-prong relays. We're going to be getting into these a little bit later and talking a little bit how they work. I'm new to these. I actually ordered 2 because I have one for the lights today, and then I have a horn on there that doesn't have the relay, so I'm going to be installing that there. Just a box of different little electronic tips that we're going to be using throughout the build. A really cool new set of wire strippers I got for Christmas. I can't wait to use these bad boys, and they do crimping as well and cutting, and then just your standard set of wire clippers and strippers. Some electrical tape. I have some heat shrink around, just a little X-Acto knife that we'll be using from time to time. I have a simple basic tester, light tester, and then a more in-depth guy that we may or may not get into. So that's what we're working with, and I wanted to show you guys. I'll have product links to most all this stuff in the description below, so make sure and check that if you want a similar setup. I wanted to take you guys over to this chart real quick, and I'll try to upload this in the comments in the description below, but if not, just pause your screen and check it out. So to try to figure out what gauge wiring we use, and I gotta give credit to Chris Fix because he's the one that showed me this. We're gonna head over here and see what kind of amperage we're pulling. So these lights, I was researching, pull 3 amps each. Basically, we're gonna shoot for the 10 amp and then try to figure out how many feet of wiring you're gonna have. So the most that we would have is not even 30 feet. So you could really get by with 10 amps here, and you go down to 30 feet. So you could go 14 gauge or 16 gauge wire is what you can use for this setup here. And so that's why I'm saying it'll change for what build that you guys are going to be doing. Another thing that I picked up from Chris Fix, and that I remember my dad doing, is building a chart anytime you're doing electrical. So I won't go into great detail, but I encourage you guys as well to go ahead and chart it out before you start. So here's the front with the headlights, the horn, the relay for that horn, the battery, the relay for the rear lights, and there we go. The cool lights we're putting on the back. And then in here is the inside the cab. This is that new switch with the 2 extra spots, and that's the switch to the horn. So I got everything laid out how I'm gonna do it, and that way it makes sense in my mind. So we're back out at the tailgate, and I wanted to show you guys the wiring I use. So I'm gonna be using this 12 gauge wiring, and it's a little bit over engineering. If you look back at that chart, I could probably be buying actually with 14 gauge, maybe even 16, but we're gonna be running this 12 gauge because I got it for free. I'm trying to save a little bit of cost, but I'm gonna put a wiring kit and some wire down in the description below that I think would work good for you guys if you're doing this same build. As always, you know, through this process, just make sure and do a little research on your own. All right, friends, so we're gonna be spending a bunch of time under the hood and working in this area. Now guys, typically when you're doing electronics, it's good to disconnect the negative first. We're gonna kind of dry run everything first, so we're not gonna be attaching stuff, so we're not gonna have any issues. But here's that horn I was telling you guys about. I don't have this thing hooked up quite properly, so I'm gonna be installing that little relay for that as well. All right, friends, so we're back to fixing some of my poor electronics that I had with that horn. But this guy here is gonna be the power supply coming into the dash. It's gonna power this 3-way toggle switch as well as the switch for the horn. And so we'll talk about that as we go, but I'm gonna put a fuse on that. So this is actually gonna have a 5-amp fuse, which should be sufficient to go ahead and fuse that switch panel. So all this is going to be doing is giving power to the actual switch inside the motor. So trying my new crimpers, they usually have a color gauge. So this is yellow 10 to 12 AGW. So again, we're not going to be hooking any of this stuff up until the end once we get things going, so we're not going to be dealing with the positive and negative at all. All right, now that we got that crimped, I'm going to slide this heat shrink over the top. As you can tell, I put that on before I got started because now there's no way with that fuse line to actually get that back through. And so I may make mistakes later on this job, but right now we started off to a good start. Friends, I forgot to mention another tool. This is a heat gun. If you don't have one, guys, just use what you have. Grab the wife's hair dryer, whatever you need, but a cigarette lighter will work just fine. Guys, I let the camera get the best of me, and if you can't see, I off-centered that just a little bit, so I'm gonna come back in because I'm a bit of a perfectionist and just go ahead and tape that off a little bit. It's more than good, but I just want to make sure that that was completely covered because I had more on this side. So we're gonna bounce around quite a bit, but the next thing I wanna do is run the long cable from the battery area all the way back to the tailgate for these lights. And we're gonna be wrapping it in this wire wrap right here. And I have a few old pieces because I try to reuse stuff as much as possible before it goes to the landfill. So a few tight spots, I may run some of this for that horn that I still gotta fix, but let's get under there and roll that. And so for that, guys, I'm doing this out in my driveway. I actually have access to a garage, but I'm gonna show you guys that you can do this anywhere. So I have this cool little guy to save my back. And the way I'm able to talk to you guys from way over here, I'm mic'd up with my new Comica Boom XD wireless mic. So if you're into YouTube or you're thinking about starting a channel, I'm gonna drop a link to those below. It might be something you're interested in. Before I got too far down the road, I actually changed my mind and I'm gonna reroute it starting from the top, and I'm just gonna slowly feed all of it through the engine bay all the way to the back. Let me know in the comments how you guys would do it. And there it is, there's our little wire. I'm gonna pull it down. We're actually gonna go over this body mount. You can see some other wiring in there. So now we're over that body mount, now at the back. Then I'm gonna try to follow this side of the frame. So the inside, not the outside, but I'm actually gonna follow the inside, and I'm gonna be able to wire tie it to a lot of these wires and hoses going to the back of the truck along the way. Alright guys, so the wire is ran. Here's my excess coming down, and all this has made it all the way to the back. Now I'm gonna start talking about where we want to put these relays. I found this little guy here. I think I'm gonna remove that and put a bolt there. So the relay for the work lights in the back is gonna be right here. So everything's gonna come to this hub. And then of course my other relay, I'm gonna be attaching somewhere about here. And so that one will be there for the horn. So I've been under the car and I saved you guys from a bunch of that, but let's take a peek here at what we're left with. So now I have this wire running all the way back, and I have lots of extra room to go from one light's gonna be here and the other light's gonna be over there. And so we'll be splicing into that, and then we'll be grounding the lights to the chassis underneath. So I didn't run a ground wire all the way back to the battery, because those are gonna be ground on each side to themselves. So the only thing that you need is the actual power wire coming out of the relay switch all the way back. And so the next thing I'm gonna do off camera real quick is run zip ties. Friends, zip ties are your buddies. So as you can see now, it's ran, but we're gonna be connecting it in places like that once I give it a once over, just to make sure it's not being pinched anywhere along the way. But that's the next step, is zip tying that up, and then we can get into some of those relays and fuses and fun stuff like that. I wanted to make sure that I really liked this location for that relay before I cut my wires for the last time, because that runs perfectly all the way to the back, and I really like how clean that is. Alright, I'm really happy with that location. The hood's gonna close just fine, and when I have everything with the shrink wrap and whatnot on there, it's gonna be smooth. So time to finally make the cut. I got all the zip ties underneath. Everything's looking really clean, getting the power to the back where those lights are. So I'm still gonna give it a few inches extra, but let's go ahead and clip it. So next up, I'm preparing that wire that runs all the way back to the lights to connect to the relay. So we're gonna use one of these guys, because that'll actually clip on to the relay. I'll show you with the other one. So that actually fits on there nice and snug. Now, I got the shrink wrap, the heat wrap again, and in some scenarios I don't have any. When I actually connect to the battery, I have this kind. So this has the built-in heat wrap with it, but I don't have that for this connector. So I'm gonna slide my heat wrap on there before I forget. Along the way, if you want, you can grab some electrical tape and actually wrap around the black wire protector just in a few spots. Some people swear by the tube kind that doesn't split, but this stuff was super cheap, so I was happy to get it. The next thing I'm gonna do is make two little ground wires. Now this shorter one is gonna go from this relay right over here, I found the ground, and then I'm gonna make a longer one that goes from this grounding spot over to this new relay up front for the horn. And so as we talked about earlier, I'm actually gonna use these heat shrink ones on one side because that's gonna go to the ground, and then over to the relay again, we're gonna be using these ones. So I'm gonna wire that up now. I really like those pre-treated shrink wrap pieces there. It makes life a lot easier, and you don't accidentally forget to add the heat shrink before you put the tip on. Well friends, I guess I'm a bit of a sellout, but I decided to pull her in the shed after all because, well, I'm here in Colorado and it started snowing. But let's get in there and I'm gonna show you guys where I'm gonna install that toggle switch. So here we are inside the 2007 Dodge Ram, and I'm trying to figure out where this guy is gonna go. So I kind of settled on a spot down here. This is actually the cup holder, and it folds up and kind of closes away. This piece here comes off, so I think in this scenario that's the best place for it. I'm gonna cut out a little hole with a Dremel and put it back in there, and then there's plenty of places to get to the wiring. Now again, under the hood I told you guys I have a power supply coming in for this. This is that horn button. I have it deactivated right now, but I'm gonna splice into this. It's gonna be fused, and it's gonna bring power to that, and it's gonna bring power to this, and then coming out of that and coming out of this will be their own designated wires. Again, this thing's ready for 2 additional plugs if I want to add lights, but I'm gonna remove that and we'll get started on that project. So what I did here is I went ahead and measured out where I'm going to be putting it, and a little tip is, rather than using the edge of the measuring tape, sometimes come into like the 1-inch mark and use that as your measurement. Sometimes these get a little wiggly and then you're not as accurate. I got a little bit of wiggle room here because the faceplate covers quite a bit, but I want to get as close to that dimensions as possible. So I started with a couple holes, and now I'm going to take my little Dremel and finish it off. Now the Dremel gets it so hot that sometimes it actually melt welds it back together, so you got to take a couple passes at it. And I don't know about you guys, but aside from the measure twice, cut once, I like to actually cut a little on the small edge, and then something like this I can always make a little bit bigger if needed. And so that's what we're gonna have to do here, is just go in and make that a little bit bigger, but at least it's not too big. All right friends, I think we got it this time. Let's check it out. Like a glove. I think that's gonna look fantastic in there. So I went with those screws actually, and I might put a little dab of glue on the back, but I think it's gonna work just fine. I'll keep an eye on them. That shouldn't move too much. And then because I like to future-proof stuff, when I put my wire, my positive coming in, when I ground this guy, I'm gonna use these connectors because they'll come apart in the future. So say I need to take this off and add a couple things, or just if I want to move it, or if this breaks and I need to replace it, I can quick connect it rather than have to clip a wire or something. Back inside the truck now, we got this guy ready to be placed into there. I have my wire that's gonna come up and give this thing power running through. So I'm gonna start by giving it power. And then again, here's that switch for the horn and the power that was coming for the horn. So this line comes in and gives the horn power, and when you push the button, this comes out. So I'm actually going to tap into this, that way I can send power over to that new toggle switch. And so all this is going to do is feed power to both of those switches. It's not actually going to feed the horn or feed the lights because those have their own direct line going into that relay. So this power is going to go into the relay and just tell it to go ahead and turn it on. And so I've already slipped my big old piece of heat shrink on there. And because I'm joining together this heavy duty wire, I had to get a bigger piece here. So I'm gonna go ahead and join those two now. All right, friends, so we got that up on there. I'm gonna slide my heat tape over the top and center it this time. And now to the heat gun. So this one here is kind of big, a little heavy duty, and it didn't quite shrink. I think it's a little old, but it didn't quite shrink up. So I'm gonna wrap that with tape, and I'm gonna button this up, guys, and meet you back at the switch plate. So here's a big moment for the build. I got this guy all wired up, and friends, I finally did forget to put the heat shrink on. Those other clips that I really wanted to put on were actually dried out and they broke when I was trying to install them. So I wasn't able to put a quick release, but I put enough cable out here to where this guy can come out and I can go ahead and install two things, I think, with no problem. So I have this is the power to the switches. This is the ground, and I did do the heat shrink on that one. And then this actually is the power going to the relay to tell the relay to turn on my lights. And there it is, guys. That's what it's gonna look like. So I have my drinks here, and this guy is gonna be sitting right there. I think it looks pretty clean. I have a little water bottle to show you how I usually do it, so there's still plenty of room and it's not in the way. Now I want to take you back underneath here and kind of show you how I have it wired up a little bit. So the power is coming from inside that console, all the grounds and the power in, the power out, and then back here you can see I have it zip tied. And then, guys, I'm running all this blue wire. Things could get hectic and confusing, so I started labeling it with my own labels that I think other people could understand if I ever got rid of the truck. And then you can see it going through the firewall there, and it's just really nice, tucked out of the way. My feet aren't going to be hitting it. It's right where all kinds of other wires usually are, as well as this hood release. So that's smooth. We should be done inside the cab. And back outside, just to show you guys again, this is the power coming from the switch to tell the relay to turn on. And this is the ground from that 3-gang switch, toggle switch, that I'm gonna put here. If you guys remember, I've grounded both of the relays here. I've already had that screw off and I didn't think ahead for another ground, but that way everything's grounded in the same spot. It looks really clean, and it's actually connecting with the chassis, so everything is going to be grounded properly. And so the top one here is number 30, and that's where the power from the battery with a fuse comes. And the power from the switch inside the car is going to be over here at 86. Friends, I'm going to pop over to the computer real quick and tell you in a little bit more detail how I understand this thing works and how I have the relays connected. So how a relay works, and this is actually a really good example, is you have the battery here and the battery's grounded, and then the positive you're sending, and actually there's supposed to be a fuse here, the fused line to number 30. And then you're also sending a power source to 86. Now that power source is the dash mounted light switch, which we have the 3 panel, and this is exactly how I have it. I have power going straight from the battery into the switch and then over here to 86. Number 85 is grounded, of course we have that on the truck, and then 87 actually sends the electricity over to the lights. So in reality, number 30 is sending the power through 87. It's grounded, but it's number 86 is what tells it to give that power. So it's actually kind of like a toggle switch is the way I understand it in and of itself, and then that light is grounded, which we're doing back at the bumper. Well guys, I hope that that was as clear as mud and that you have a little bit better understanding of relays. So when you have a bumper like mine that's damaged that bad, guys, it really doesn't mean that big a thing if you start drilling holes in it. You can't really do much more harm. So I had thought all day long that these are going to be mounted underneath here, kind of shining out for all to see. But just given the rare chance to rip these off the back, I went ahead and settled on the idea of putting them right here. So I'm going to be drilling a hole through this bumper right out the back. And again, with this bumper, I'm going to try to get it as accurate as possible, but it's a little bit damaged, so I'm going to do the best that I can. And so I'm using a punch because I don't want my drill bit dancing all around. So I'm going to punch that, and that should keep it nice and steady. And friends, the real pro tip here is to make sure and use this blue Permatex thread locker. I started using this stuff on everything. So I'm putting it on the threads there. They gave me a locking washer, but not a locking nut. So of course you can go ahead and put your own on there, but this stuff is gonna save you. You don't want these things rattling down the highway. Got this other side drilled, and that is in a bit of a dimple there. But guys, I can't emphasize it enough. I'm taking this thing apart. This is the mount, and it has 4 little screws that hold this piece on, and I'm putting that thread locker on each one. I saw a review on Amazon for these lights, and this guy said he drug them down the road and they actually kept working, so that's a cool testament to the lights. But I don't want to find myself in that situation, so I'm doing a few little things here to take a few extra moments and make sure that mine are going to stay right where I want them. That light over there on the driver's side is wired up, and the one above me is too. They're connected by this power going up to the relay, and now we're going to do the groundwork. And so what I've done is I found this little hole here, and I started sanding it to make sure it's going to get a really good ground. And I'm just going to run a short wire from here over to ground that out, and then I'll do the same thing on the other side. There's another identical hole over there, and I'm going to sand it down again to make sure it has a good grounding, and I'll ground those both up, and we should be done back here at the back end of the truck. Well guys, if you're still with me, thank you so much. The snow's still flying outside, and it's only getting colder. I've actually been using this heat gun to warm my hands and feet more than to do shrink wrap. But friends, we're almost done. All I have left on this build is to put in a couple inline fuses. So I'm running from the battery to the 2 different relays, and I'm putting a fuse inline. That's all we got, and then we're gonna turn the key and see if these lights don't light up. Everything's now hooked up to the hot side of the battery, and we have everything fused like it should be. I got the right size amp fuses, and now the relay has everything it needs. This relay has everything it needs. Now guys, it's just time to get inside there and see what's happening. Woo! Look at those lights. Boy, oh boy, those are crazy. All right, so don't forget, it's the far right should be the lights. Dang, that thing lit up bright. Let's check it out. Boom! Heck yeah. So awesome, so awesome. All right guys, so we're gonna have to wait for about a half an hour. It is almost dark here in Colorado, and then we're gonna take these outside and check them out. But friends, I don't know about you, but I did not forget about that little horn. So let's hit that horn and see what happens. Woo, baby. So it's officially dark 30 here in Colorado. I'm gonna hop in and let's show you how these guys work. Alright, so something I was excited to do is I really wanted to get a set so I can have a little bit of assistance while I'm backing up. So I'm going to show you my regular reverse lights. So there's the reverse lights. Now check this out. You could kind of see why I needed some more extra power back there, especially with the tinted windows. It's really hard to see when I'm backing up in this new truck I have. I want to show you guys the difference one more time of the reverse lights. So there they are. Very good. Now check this out. Boom. You can't even tell I put my reverse lights on now with those things on. Hey, what a better way to end this video than using the light off my new reverse backup work lights on this Ram 2500. So friends, I hope you were able to gather a few tips and tricks. Make sure, and if you get that wiring harness, it's gonna save you a lot of this. I wired it myself and I used some heavier gauge wires. Make sure you got all your amps and fuses aligned how they're supposed to be. But you know, I hope this showed you that even you can do this in your garage, in your driveway. It's a fun little weekend project, maybe a good 8 hours. Power tip, if you got a buddy or a friend, that will just give you an extra set of hands. They could feed you wires in different places. I think that would be very beneficial. And then if you're gonna make a video out of it, that'll definitely bog you down with time as well. But friends, I hope you like this content. Make sure and subscribe if you're not already, and we can't wait to see you in the next video.